Okay, welcome. Perfect. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Martin Hernandez, and I'm a senior program associate, now program manager. Oh my goodness, with the LA County Department of Arts and Culture. I'm joined by the newest member of our team, my colleague Sam Avitia. Say hi, Sam.
Hi,
Uh,
everyone. Good morning.
who is the Arts Internship Program Specialist. Together, we would like to welcome you to the 2024 LA County Arts Internship Program Application Workshop. The purpose of this workshop is to orient you to the program, go over all of the requirements, and give you time to think and talk about what would make a successful application. We'll also give you a little preview of what to expect when you access the online application system. Please feel free to utilize the chat function for your questions, and I will stop periodically to review those questions with Sam's assistance. So really the chat is the best way to be in dialogue with us today. I do want to note that this session is being recorded so that folks who are not able to attend this in person can access this information later. If you'd like to keep your camera off for the duration of this session as a result, then we certainly understand. So, as we begin, we want to pause and acknowledge the first peoples of this ancestral territory that was seized from them, often violently so, the land today that we call Los Angeles County. I welcome you to follow along as I read the official LA County Land Acknowledgement created in partnership with local indigenous communities. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonialization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, Gabrieleño Tongva Indians of the California Tribal Council, the Gabrieleño Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, Gabrieleño Band of Mission Indians Kitch Nation, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, and the San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. To learn more about the First Peoples of Los Angeles County, please visit the Los Angeles City County Native American Indian Commission website at lanaic.lacounty.gov. Thank you. So now we're going to continue with a little bit of history and talk through both the program, vision, and impact of this program thus far. First, some background. Some of you may be familiar with the Getty Merrill Multicultural Undergraduate Internship Program. Our Arts Internship Program is actually a sister program to the Gettys, which was launched in 1993. Our program followed a couple of years later in the year 2000. The two programs have since run on parallel tracks and together constitute the largest paid arts internship program for college students in the country. We are grateful to the Getty for their long-standing and continuing support of this since this program's inception. On the screen, you can see the vision statement for this program. This language, which we revised in 2020, acknowledges that students gain a wide variety of benefits from this experience, regardless of whether or not they ultimately pursue a career in the arts. We believe that this program, both the experience within your organization as well as the educational opportunities which we provide, that these interns will gain skills that are transferable to contexts both inside and outside of the arts. To date, more than 3,000 students have participated in this program, and one of the wonderful things that we've seen in the last decade is the increasing number of former interns who are popping up in leadership positions all over Los Angeles County. We even have former interns returning as mentors for various pieces of the program or supervisors within the organization, and I think this is something that we've stopped being surprised by when we're out in the field and get to meet folks who will tell us, hey, I was an intern 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's always very exciting to hear. Of course, 2020 marked the 20th anniversary of the program and comes with another important milestone. Cumulatively, all of the interns in the history of the program have now contributed over 1 million work hours to the field of arts and culture in Los Angeles, which is so exciting. So now that you know a little bit about the history and impact of the program, let's talk through organizational eligibility because this is extremely important Unfortunately, this might be where we lose some of you in the audience, but that's okay. We would much rather iron out the particulars now than later after you've done the work of applying for the grant. So firstly, this is a grant program, and it is for 501c3 organizations, not individuals. So you must be a representative, you must be a 501c3 organization, nonprofit organization to apply for these funds. In addition, we require that you have that 501c3 status for at least 2 years. So that makes sure that your organization is steady and stable and ready to handle an award of this kind. So as I mentioned, this is open to 501c3 arts organizations. For us, arts means performing, presenting, literary, or municipal arts organizations. It does not include visual arts organizations or museums. That is because those organizations can be funded for internships through the Getty Merrill Multicultural Undergraduate Internship Program, and as such are not eligible for our program. So I'm going to say that one more time. If your organization is a visual arts-based organization or a museum, you are ineligible to apply for our program. We would instead encourage you to apply for the Getty's program. Our internships are for arts organizations under the umbrella of performing, presenting, literary, or municipal arts. You also cannot be part of a college or university and apply for this grant. Fiscally sponsored organizations are okay as long as your fiscal sponsor is located in California and you are under a Model A arrangement. Your fiscal sponsor must also be willing to be able to handle all payments and contracting that is required by the program. If this is your first time applying or are newly returning as a fiscally sponsored organization, you will be asked to submit proof of this at the end of the application, and more on that in just a little bit. This is, of course, a county program, so you must be based here in Los Angeles County. That means that you are physically located here and that your mission is to serve the residents of this region. So it is not just enough to be located in Los Angeles. You also must be primarily providing programming here in Los Angeles. You must also be an actively functioning organization. So for us, we define that as having a board of directors that meets regularly with more than half of your board members living in the state of California. You must also put on a minimum of 4 programs or performances per year. Those can be virtual or in person, and of course adhere to all applicable laws. Again, if you're a new or returning organization, you will be asked to submit proof of these things as part of the application. In addition to those categories, grantees of our Community Impact Arts Grant, also known as CIAG, are also able to apply as long as you are in good standing with the CIAG grant and you currently have arts programming. Typically, CIAG organizations are social justice and social service organizations who have arts programming and contributed great internship opportunities to the pool every year. So a CIAG organization, for example, might be primarily a nonprofit that does outreach and provide services for folks experiencing homelessness, for example. They are able to apply to our department to receive a grant through CIAG, which would fund any arts programming. Maybe they put on arts workshops for folks experiencing homelessness. You would then, a CIAG grantee would then be eligible to apply for our program for an intern working specifically with that arts programming at that organization. Again, if you are part of a college or university, or if you work for a visual arts organization such as an art museum, you are not eligible for this program. Bear in mind, though, that the Getty's program would be open to you. They have a separate application process will open in a few months. I'm going to pause really briefly. Sam, any questions?
We do have a question. Wendy asked, does that include media arts?
Great question. Yes, media arts is included as part of the eligibility for this program. Yeah, great question. Anything else?
That was all the questions in the chat. Oh, we got another one. What does 4 programs performances a year qualify? What qualifies as public?
That's a great question. We don't have a standard definition. We want to see that as a 501c3 nonprofit, you are providing programming to your community. So whatever your organization determines as the community that they are serving, we want to see 4 of those programs happening a year. So again, we don't have necessarily like minimums or things like that, but we want to see that your organization is functioning as a 501c3, providing services in your community, and you would be asked to speak to that as part of the application. Great question. Okay, so moving on. So what do you get if your applications are awarded? And I know that this might seem like we're jumping ahead a little bit because we're actually going to backtrack and talk about the application towards the end, but we do want to talk about the grant amounts and awards so that you have a little bit of an understanding of what this opportunity looks like. So each organization will be awarded anywhere between $6,760 and $7,510 per intern. And I'll talk about that range in just a minute. This grant is meant to be used to hire an undergraduate intern for 400 hours of work during the duration of your project. How much you are eligible for depends on your budget size. So we have a handy dandy chart here. I'm happy to report that over the years, this chart has gotten much smaller and easier to read. Hopefully it's pretty clear. But this table breaks down the size of the awards based on your organization's budget size. As you can see, an organization with a budget under $500,000 is allowed to request a maximum of 2 interns, which would yield a maximum grant amount of $15,020. Before I go on, I want to note that organizations with budgets under $500,000 will receive an additional $750 administrative stipend per position to help offset additional costs of hosting an intern. This includes things like purchasing equipment, covering payroll tax, mileage reimbursement, etc. So again, if your organization is under budget is under $500,000 and you are awarded an intern or 2, you will receive a $750 administrative stipend for each one of those internships. For organizations with budgets over $500,000, you are able to request up to 3 interns for a maximum award of $20,280. Organizations with budgets over $500,000 are not eligible to receive the $750 administrative stipend. So the salary that you're seeing here, the $6,760, is meant to cover the actual hourly wage, the hourly cost of hosting an intern for 400 hours. It's $16.90 times 400 hours. That's how we arrive at that dollar amount. If you have an intern that, again, your organization's budget is under $500,000, we will bump up that award by $750 per intern to help you with some of those administrative costs. Now, as you'll notice here, there's a note regarding organizations who request a maximum of 3 positions. So for budgets over $500,000. In the year 2017, the Board of Supervisors passed a Cultural Equity and Inclusion Initiative that instructed our department to look into ways that we could expand our programming to be more equitable and inclusive to all folks in the region. As part of that initiative, the internship program was expanded from 132 positions where it had been for many years to 178 positions. This allowed organizations for the first time to request up to 3 interns. However, that expansion comes with a mandate that of the total internship pool, at least 28 positions need to go to students at the community colleges who had been historically underrepresented in our program. As such, if your organization is requesting 3 interns, you must reserve at least one of those positions for a community college student in the event that you are awarded. Your organization will get to choose which of the 3 positions will go to a community college student if selected to be a host, and we will work with your organization in the event that your recruitment efforts do not yield any community college applicant. Basically, that means if you're unable to recruit a student from the community colleges, we're not going to deem you, we're not going to take your grant away. In addition to grantees who have been awarded 3 interns, the department will pick a subset of grantees who have indicated that they would like to support us in this work to be community college hosts and ask them to recruit from the community colleges as well. Since this initiative was introduced, I'm happy to report that we've seen quite an increase in the community college students that participate in this program year after year. I can actually share that we're pretty regularly getting close to nearly a quarter of the internship pool being represented from the community colleges, which is really, really exciting for us. So just again, to reiterate, if your organization is awarded 3 internships, one of those will be required to go to a student for the community colleges. So just something to keep in mind as you are putting your application together. So regardless of the size of your grant award, all interns are paid the same amount. That will mean that you need to plan for additional costs. Excuse me, I'm on the right side. That will mean that you will need to plan for additional costs. So things like recruitment, employer taxes, parking reimbursement, and mileage may not be covered as part of the grant award. Again, if your organization is under the $500,000 mark, you will get you will get that administrative stipend that can help offset some of these costs. But it's going to be very, very important that your organization be thinking about those additional fees if you're not awarded the administrative stipend. Recruitment is highlighted under here because or is underlined here because sometimes that can be an unexpected place where organizations have to spend money, printing flyers, even just staff time, right? The fact that you will need staff to review resumes, maybe going out to schools and talking about the opportunity and attempt to gain more applications. So really something that you want to keep in mind, especially if this is the first time you're applying for this grant, especially if that's the first time you're being awarded this grant. Sometimes these things can take additional resources that are unfortunately not covered by the cost of the grant. One frequent question we get is, where do taxes fit into all of this? So you'll need to remember that this is a grant to the organization, not to the intern directly. The intern will be hired by your organization as a regular employee. So that means if you use a payroll service, then your intern should be put on payroll, meaning that he or she will receive the $6,760 total minus taxes. If you do not have a payroll service and you pay your intern the full amount, you will need to issue a 1099 to that intern at the end of the year. Payroll is highly recommended for all organizations, especially given AB 5. Your organization must comply with all labor laws when hiring the intern. Unfortunately, we are not legal counsel, so it is up to your organization to determine that what that looks like with the resources your organization has for onboarding the intern. One final note here, the City and County of Los Angeles are reviewing their minimum wage each year in January, meaning that between the time that your organization submits the application and when you hear back about awards, the minimum wage in the county may change. Unfortunately, it's a good thing for the county. It's a little bit of an annoying thing for us and for your organization. But essentially, in January of 2024, we will know from the city and the county whether or not minimum wage is increasing past $16.90 an hour. If that happens, then we will automatically adjust all of the awards to account for that overage. It will just be the responsibility of the grantee to ensure that interns are receiving the new rate of pay. So in January, once we let everybody know about their awards, we will also say, hey, minimum wage has been increased or not. And so the grant awards may need to change as a result of that. And I believe this is something that will just be happening yearly from here on out. So this is a new part of our process. I'm going to pause for just a minute for any questions. All right, not seeing any questions. Thanks. And we'll make sure we have plenty of time at the end. So we've talked about organizational eligibility. Now let's talk about program requirements, the timeline, and intern eligibility. Big section here. So in addition to organizational eligibility requirements, there are other things that the panel looks for in terms of organizations to participate in this program. And we'll talk about our panel process a little bit later, but all of these applications are reviewed by a grant panel like all of our grants are in this department. And so your application is speaking to these panelists about your organizational capacity to hire. So we're talking a little bit about what some of the panelists look for. Ultimately, they are really looking for organizations who are truly able to take on an intern for the program, meaning that the students is not going to be banished to a desk in a closet and asked to fend for themselves, right? The panelists really want to see that your organization has a capacity to recruit, select, train, and ultimately mentor, which is paramount. The panel does look closely at your application to get a sense of how your organization will approach all of these pieces of the program. So you want to make sure that you are infusing that throughout your application. Ultimately, there is also some paperwork and data collection involved with this process. Not a ton, but after all, we are a government agency, so we do need to collect certain sets of information from both this organization and the intern. Any organization that is new to the program will be required to attend our supervisor orientation that is held in the spring in partnership with the Getty Foundation. I know that sometimes people chafe under the term required, but the feedback from the event every year is overwhelmingly positive, and we work hard to make sure that it's an informational event for everyone in attendance. So the program timeline, of course, we are over here on the left in the application period. We still have about a month left in the application period, which will close on Wednesday, October 11th at 11:59 p.m. And don't forget it, not a minute sooner, not a minute later. This means that we will be allowed, excuse me, so when the application closes in October, we will move into our review of all of the application that includes an audit process, all of those fun things, for our panel to convene ultimately in December or January. This means that we will allow our organizations, or we will be able to notify our organizations of their award by mid-February and then move into contracting. So I just want to point out, you're submitting your application in September, October, and it is many months before you are hearing from us again with the awards. This is because we have a current internship cycle in session. We actually still have about 20 plus internships that have yet to be filled in the current internship cycle. And then it takes us many months to get the applications to a place of grant review and panel review in December before awards are made in early spring. So just keep in mind that it is a pretty lengthy timeline before you hear from us, and especially before your internships begin. Positions will begin posted on our website in April 1st of 2024. So now this is next year. I'll explain more about this in a minute, but in the application, you will choose which month of you would like your position launched to our website so that you can begin recruitment. April 1st is the first launch date of the program, meaning any organization who wanted their positions posted on April 1st will begin to begin recruitment on that day. The earliest an intern can begin their internship is June 1st of 2024. All 400 hours of the internship must be completed by March 1st of 2025. So when we talk about the internship project that you are proposing, it is occurring in between June 1st of 2024 and March 1st of 2025. That is the window that you have to play with in terms of the project that you are proposing. Do not propose anything that is starting in April or May, because interns are not allowed to begin work until June 1st of 2024. So again, between June 1st of 2024 and March 1st of 2025 is your window for the proposing the project that will be discussed as part of the application. So now let's talk a little bit about who you can hire. Intern candidates must be currently enrolled undergraduates at either a four-year or community college. We define enrolled as being signed up for at least one class at the time of application. We used to have credit minimums, part-time student, full-time student. We got rid of all of that. We just want to see that they are enrolled in at least one college class at the time of application. Students who will be graduating, who will be what we consider recent grads. So for us, that means graduating between May 1st and December 1st of 2024 are also eligible to participate. So sometimes we have organizations that are looking for seniors that have just graduated college because maybe there's a full-time or part-time position that they would like to fill at the conclusion of this internship. And so you are able to look for those students that have just graduated, so long as they graduate between May 1st and December 1st of next year. Not this year, of next year. In addition, the student must reside in or attend school in LA County. So most of the time, students are both. They live in LA County and they go to school in LA County. But let's say that a student was born and raised in New York and they are in LA attending school at UCLA. They would be eligible to participate in this program because they go to school in LA. The reverse is also true. Let's say that we have a student that grew up in the San Fernando Valley in Silmar, but they are at NYU for school. They are able to participate in this program because they are a resident of LA County. They're probably home for the summer from NYU and want to do this internship. they're eligible to participate because they are a resident of LA County, even if they go to school outside of LA County. So it's one or the other or both. Intern candidates may not have a prior bachelor degree or higher. So we are really looking for students that are attending school for the first time, not a returning student, but attending school for the first time. They cannot have participated in the internship program before. This is a one-time participation only program, and they cannot be a previous staff member of the organization or a relative of a staff member or board member of that organization. They can apply at other organizations, but they cannot apply at an organization where they have that personal connection. As I mentioned before, you will be submitting your interns to us for review. And at that point, our team will double check to ensure that they've never participated in the program before and that all of this other information checks out. So it's not just on you. You will have the support of our team to make sure that these documents are in place, but you do need to be communicating all of these things to your applicants so that we make sure that they are eligible to participate in the program. So we're about to do a deeper dive into the structure of your internship proposals, but first I want to be clear about two things. In recognition of a shifting world of work, we are asking you to submit internship proposals that can be completed on site with the option of up to 100 hours of work being completed remotely. As you all know, or some of you might know, the COVID-19 pandemic did a total number on this program. We had to completely pause the 2020 cycle while we awaited further instructions from LA County Public Health. And as a result of the pandemic, there is now an allowance for some remote work as part of this program, which there never would have been before. So you are allowed to do some remote work for this program up to 100 hours, but we are asking you to submit proposals that are mostly done on site with the option of 100 hours to be worked remotely. Of course, should there be any changes to public health guidance that will affect internships, we at the department will be in contact with you immediately to let you know those steps. But at this point, what we're kind of implementing as the long-term solution is some flexibility for these internships with 100 hours being able to be worked remotely. Organizations will be able to request that interns work more than 100 hours remotely if you meet a certain set of criteria that we will discuss in the event that your organization is awarded. Secondly, no matter where, regardless of where the intern is working, either on-site or remotely, all equipment an intern needs to complete the internship must be provided by the organization. This most commonly takes the form of a company-issued laptop or computer, and this is, again, the case regardless of whether the intern is working on-site or remotely. So it's very important that your organization take that into account when planning the structure of the internship. A note on the 400 hours. In the application, your organization will choose a launch date of the position, when you will begin recruitment, how many hours the intern will work a week, so either 15 to 40 hours a week, which is the range. And then from there, you will need to use that information to determine the start and end dates for the internship. This gives your organization much greater flexibility in terms of the type of internship project you want to propose. However, it does require much more advanced planning. So let's give an example. Let's say that your organization has a project that's beginning in June and ending in September. So they want their internship to start as early as possible on June 1st of 2024. That organization has decided that their intern will be working 15 hours a week. A 400-hour internship or a 400-hour internship at 15 hours a week is a 27-week internship, meaning that the intern will not complete their hours starting in June until the first or second week of December. You'll remember that the project spans from June through September. So now this organization still has intern hours in the month of October, November, and maybe December to figure out as part of this structure. Right? So you have to make sure if you're having an intern work a lesser number of hours per week, then the internship will be expanded. And so you need to make sure that you will have enough work for that intern to complete after the project ends in September. Okay? To give another example, An intern cannot start a 15-hour-a-week internship in December because that would go all the way through June. And of course, the internship needs to be completed by March 1st of 2025, right? So your organization needs to be doing the math around how many hours a week you want them to work, when are they starting, when are they ending, how much work do we have them to do in order to make sure that everything checks out as part of the application. So as you can see, it will be crucial for your organization to think about the intern project, how many hours you want them to work a week, start and end dates, as well as the time it will take to recruit students. It is the responsibility of the organization to track the intern hours and work with the student to ensure that all 400 hours are completed by March 1st of 2025. I'll just say that the most common scenario that we see is organizations running out of time to have their interns complete. It's usually not the opposite. Oh, we don't have any work for them to do. It's usually that the deadline is coming and we don't have enough time for the intern to work those hours, especially when they're competing with school. So it's very, very important that you pay close attention to that as part of the application. So in addition to the 400 hours, continuing to talk about the 400 hours, in any event where an intern is required to work more than 8 hours a day or more than 40 hours a week, overtime must be paid to the intern, and that is not included as part of this program award. So we do not give you additional money to cover overtime. That is something that your organization will need to absorb if you're having the intern work overtime. Flexing hours within a work week is not allowed. It's actually illegal by California law. What I mean by that is you cannot have an intern work a 10-hour day and then work a 6-hour day and call it even on the timesheet and not pay overtime, right? If the intern, once that intern has exceeded 8 hours, they are now in overtime, even if you are not going to have them work the a full 8-hour shift in the same pay period or in the same week. So flexing is not allowed. We do not want to see that as part of this program. We strongly discourage organizations from allowing an intern to take a time off for vacations or other extended trips, as it will affect your originally proposed timeline. I just said a minute ago that a very common scenario for us is to get an email from a supervisor that says, oh my goodness, we only have a month left. Our intern still has 150 hours. How are they going to complete this internship? Unfortunately, there's a lot of overlap in those scenarios with supervisors who've allowed those interns to take time off, whether it's for trips or for finals week or for whatever. We understand that organizations want to be flexible, but at the end of the day, those 400 hours are a lot. I've administrated a number of internship programs. You do not see 400 hours for internships very often. It's a long time. So it is very, very important that your organization is staying on top of that at all times. For holidays, we would ask that you follow your organization protocol and treat them according to your paid holiday policy. If they're a part-time intern, as a part-time employee, what holiday pay do they get? If the intern is a full-time employee, what holiday arrangements do your full-time employees get? The expectation is that it's the same. So some additional things to keep in mind. Does your proposal overlap with the school year? If yes, then an intern will need to balance schoolwork in addition to their internship, meaning that it's highly unlikely that they will be able to work 30 to 40 hours per week. So we see applications that say, we want an intern to support us with our fall programming, and we want them to work from September to December at 40 hours a week. Guess what? It's going to be very difficult to find an intern that can work 40 hours a week that is also in school, right? So you need to be looking at school calendars and adjusting accordingly. If your proposal is in the summer, then it is more likely that you will get an intern who can work 20, 30, 40 hours a week because they are not in school. But what's going to happen in August or September when they go back to classes is they're going to want to drop down that schedule, right? So it's very, very important that you be thinking about these things in the structure of the proposal to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. You must factor in time for recruitment. It is your organization's responsibility to handle all recruitment and hiring and onboarding for the intern. We do not match students. We do not take in applications and hand them out to organizations. We do recruitment for this program as a whole, meaning that Sam and I will be going to a whole slate of schools. I think we did 12 different presentations last year to different educational institutions to talk about this program. We will direct them to the website, which will have all of the positions listed, but your organization is responsible for the recruitment and hiring of the internship. So it is very, very important that your team be thinking about your approach to recruitment. Who do you know? Who are you connected to? What schools are you in communication with so that you can be ready to recruit? I will say that I think it's one of the hardest parts of this program is finding your intern. And we have many organizations that have underestimated the time and energy that it takes in order to do that. So be thinking about it now. You must factor in time for recruitment as part of this grant. Students do not have to have previous experience in the arts, right? If you remember the slide where I talked about the eligibility requirements, I did not say that a student has to be majoring in the arts. So that's great for us because it means that you get to cast a really wide net, right? You can look at a lot of students and consider them for this internship program. So we hope that that's helpful when recruiting. And of course, the intern will have the opportunity to participate in additional educational events. We call them peer group events. You may have at one point heard of an event called Art Summit, which is taking a little bit of a hiatus right now, but may be back. Spoiler alert for a future cycle. And so those are also things that the intern will participate in that will require some of their hours. So you can build in a little bit of that flexibility. The arts department is committed to cultural equity and inclusion, so all participating organizations are strongly encouraged to recruit and select students of diverse backgrounds, including students with disabilities. We very much encourage that as part of this program. So in the application, you will be choosing, in the next 5 weeks, you will be choosing which date next year you want your position to launch. It is very important that you pay close attention to this on the application. For the past couple of years, I've had a handful of organizations that have just blown past this part of the application and realized many months later that it was wrong or not what they wanted. So in the application, you are picking when you're going to launch your positions, which is when you're going to begin recruitment. If your project is in September, you may not want to launch in April, but you probably want to launch by at least June, right? So you give yourself June, July, and August to look at applications, submit applications, all of those kinds of things, right? But if you have a project that's starting in June, you probably want to launch on April 1st, right? So that intern is ready to go on June 1st, to actually begin work in the program. So be paying close attention to these dates as part of the application. I see the chat blowing up. So Sam, I will take some questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have our first question is about the 400 hours being hybrid. So the question is, we have a hybrid program model, which I believe is one of the reasons we can request more than 100 hours of remote work. However, does that make our application less likely to be approved? Based on what you said, it sounds like we share that information after awarded, not during the application process.
So in the application, we ask, what is your approach to working remotely with an intern? And so that's a section where you can explain, we have a hybrid work environment. Our organization is comfortable navigating a hybrid space. And so you're able to speak to that as part of the application. There is no preferencing one way or the other. It's mostly that we need your organization to be clear about what that will mean for the intern, right? And so that's what you're speaking to in the application. How do you plan to support this intern in a hybrid space? So you will be expected to speak to that as part of the application, and we encourage you to speak to that as part of the application. We understand with COVID, we are not the only. I mean, Sam and I are coming to you live from not the office, right? So we understand that a hybrid work environment can be just as successful for an intern, but you will be able to speak to that as part of the application.
Awesome, thank you. This next question is about intern eligibility. So are there requirements about how much, what type, where we can recruit, or is all that matters is the selected candidates meet the requirements you laid out?
Great question. We definitely do not have requirements about how much. I think every organization is different. I mean, the reality of the situation is there are some grantees in this program that have very big names that are very publicly known that have to do very little recruitment because they post something on Instagram and they'll get 1,000 applications. For smaller organizations, that may not be the case. And so we do not have minimums, but we do expect your organization to be thinking really starting now um, about what that will look like for your organization because we cannot tell you what that looks like. On the flip side, we have some really small organizations that work with students as part of their work, like they're connected to college students already, and so they have no problems getting interns because they're funneling folks in from already existing relationships, right? So we definitely do not tell you what it needs to look like, but what we do need to tell you is to be thinking about that now, because again, we don't want you thinking that it will be an easy process and then you actually the day comes and you've received one application, two applications, and missed really valuable time. It but all we are looking at as staff, sorry, I'm just making sure I answer all parts of your question, is the student eligibility. So we're not going to be looking too deeply into your recruitment practices. Once you send us the student, we're just making sure that they are eligible for the program and moving on from there with approval. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. So if applying for multiple interns, do you need or is it preferred to differentiate the roles, or can they all have a range of responsibilities that hit on different areas, i.e. outreach marketing, programming, admin, mentoring, which we then tailor to the intern's strengths, interest, and the organizational needs?
I'm gonna parlay this question and say that we're gonna talk about more about this in a little bit. The short answer is you definitely need to differentiate their roles. We want to see individualized projects for each one of the internships proposed. And in fact, one of the quickest ways to not get multiple interns is to submit proposals that are too similar. So more on that to come, but that's the short answer to the question. Yeah.
Last question here from Taryn from Grand Vision. An application question. So in the past, OGP grantees did not need to include supplemental organizational materials. Has that changed?
It has not. We are going to be discussing that more in just a little bit, but no. If you are a current OGP grantee or a current internship grantee, you do not need to submit supplemental materials, and we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Awesome.
Great questions. Thank you. So I'm going to actually ask us to jump in the chat here, and I'll pause to give folks time to respond. We've covered the basics of the program. Okay, so you've heard a little bit about intern responsibility, eligibility, organizational eligibility. So we want to pivot now and discuss a little bit about some elements that we want you to consider when crafting a successful internship proposal. This is going to get at that question we just got. So it's very likely that many of us have been interns at one point. I know I have been. So I want to take a moment to reflect on that. So if you could, using the chat, I want you to answer the question that you see on your screen. In your experience, what is one aspect to a successful internship experience? It can be anything. Let's take a minute, drop it in the chat. Wonderful. So deliverables aligned to students' learning goals and existing strengths. Amazing. A great mentor-mentee relationship. Ideally, yes. Clear goals and outcomes for the intern. Yes, love that. I just setting a clear work schedule for the intern. Okay, amazing. Let's talk about clarity. I love how clarity has come up a couple of times. That is definitely very important. I think a lot of times one thing that we see is there being a lot of assumptions made. I think sometimes supervisors make assumptions about interns knowing certain things or expecting them to know certain things that are not clear. I think the interns definitely have a tendency to do the same, expect of their supervisors without necessarily making those things clear. So being clear, being concise, trying to make things fit and kind of modeling things around existing strengths are all great suggestions. I think we asked this question because I think it's useful to be thinking about that as you're putting this application together. We want you to speak to that as part of this application, and where in the application you can kind of highlight how your organization has either had experience with doing that in the past, or is already thinking about those things. I think can be really successful. In addition, we also think that submitting an application with a specific project in mind can be really helpful and strengthening your application. So for us, successful projects can run the gamut, but usually fall into the categories that you see here, and you will be able to select these kind of buckets as part of your application. Ultimately, we want proposals that are substantive. They shouldn't be a backlog of projects that everyone else has avoided. We want to see a really, substantial, sizable project for these internship proposals. We use the filing example a lot, meaning like we don't want them just like filing endless paperwork away forever. However, we all know that all jobs include a degree of filing or other busy work. We're not saying that there can't be any of that as part of their internship, but it shouldn't constitute the majority of the intern's work or project. A common mistake we see in these applications is framing the proposal as a staff position. While we want there to be a substantive work for the intern, this is not a substitute for staffing gaps in your organization, and the panel will take note if they feel the project outline is more for a staff position than an intern. So here are your guardrails. We don't want general, boring, administrative filing. That's on one side of the spectrum. But we also don't want a position description that has been for an unfilled position that your organization has had for 2 years, right? Your project for this intern needs to be in between those two bookends of boring administrative filing work and a staff position, right? And maybe that sounds kind of obvious, but again, it is very common for us to receive an application that we look at and say, this is not for an intern, this is for a staff person. This is because this organization wishes that they had the money to hire for this staff or for this type of position, so we're just going to have the internship do it. That is a very, very thin line. It is a very tough place to put an intern in, and a lot of the times panels are very sensitive to that. So you are proposing a concrete project somewhere within those guardrails, in one of these buckets. In addition to being rooted in a clear project, we also want you to consider these additional elements that you will also speak to as part of the application. What are the learning objectives, right? This is a great space, a very underutilized space in the application as far as I'm concerned. A lot of times in the learning objectives, we get 5 bullet points from grantees, and it's, bullet point number 1 is, learning the ins and outs of working at a 501c3 arts nonprofit. That's certainly a learning objective. That's certainly something they're going to learn. But do you have an opportunity to make it more specific than that? Absolutely. So be thinking about what are some of the learning objectives that an intern might be able to take away. What might meaningful on-the-job training and work experience look like? Who are they getting to shadow? Who are they getting to, who are they getting to meet outside of your organization that your organization is leveraging resources to support the intern in, right? You definitely want to speak to that. Excellent communication between an intern and a supervisor. In the application, you will be asked, what is the supervisor's qualifications to mentor an intern? Speak to that. Concrete projects, we've already covered. Adequate workspace dedicated to an intern. So where are they going to be located? If you're working in a hybrid environment, how are you going to support them? How are you going to make sure that they feel comfortable working in a remote environment? Sufficiently challenging responsibilities. Again, not just giving them the boring work. How are you challenging them, giving them things that will help them learn and grow? And of course, integration into an organization via a well thought out orientation and onboarding process. All of these things are going to be able to be spoken to in the application, and we want you to do that so that the panelists can get a really great picture of what it will be like for this intern, not only to do their internship, but to be onboarded into the internship and maybe even, outroed from their internship, right? So speaking to that as part of this application. We strongly encourage, if you haven't already, checking out this year's positions. You can actually go to www.lacountyarts.org/internships and see the current list of positions on our website. It's a great way to go. It's a great place to go for ideas if your organization's kind of feeling stuck. And you'll notice that the position descriptions here listed here are brief, and for marketing and recruitment purposes. In the application, you're going to have much more space to flush out your learning objectives and the description of the internship. So it's very, very important you remember what you're seeing on the website is just a slice of the application. In the application, there's much more space to be speaking to your approach to the internship, the structure of the internship, so you make sure that you want to take advantage of that. So I've talked a lot a bit about our panel review process. So I want to just make sure that I briefly talk about what that looks like so you can get a sense of it. Panelists will be looking for evidence that your organization has given some thought to what your intern will be doing during the program and how what they will be doing will be beneficial to the intern on the whole. What meaningful and transferable skills will they learn? As a result, we do ask that you identify a specific primary project for the intern and tell us what that project is, as I mentioned. We know that taking on an intern is an investment, so you could have the most amazing project in the world, but you must also have the time and capacity to take care of your intern. And I think that's something, again, that a lot of organizations don't realize until too late, is you have to have the staffing capacity in order to be able to support the intern. One of the most constant critiques we hear from interns is, I love my organization and they do great work, but they didn't need an intern, they needed more staff. There's a balancing act required here, as I mentioned before. We want you to give your interns meaningful experience while also recognizing that they are signing up for a short-term commitment. If you've participated before, panelists will also consider the organization's history with the program and specifically whether there have been issues in the past regarding supervision or payment to the intern. All internship applications go through 2 levels of review. The first level of review is aimed at assessing the strength of the application and how well it meets the goals of the program. So that's the first level of review that is occurring. The second level of review is aimed at finalizing the pool of applicants based on a number of competing factors that you can see here on this slide. They include things like community served, geography, where the internship is located, discipline, cultural tradition represented, organization budget size, and then type of internship project, as in marketing, production internships, so on and so forth, as well as interest in and capacity to recruit and host community college students. So I have a bright, shiny new disclaimer for you all this year. In 2023, the last year application cycle, we received a record-breaking number of internship applications. We received 303 applications. That's more than OGP, and it is more applications than we have ever received in the history of this program. These balancing factors ended up being very important for the panel when making decisions about who to fund in the internship program. Unfortunately, that means that every year we are declining perfectly acceptable, perfectly good applications simply because we don't have enough funding to go around. So I'm just being clear about that now, that as we are watching the number of internship applications increase year after year, we have broke records the past 3 years. These things become more important. So sometimes the panel is having to make a decision about an award and not give somebody a grant, not because the internship application was not good or not viable, but simply because, for example, there were too many marketing positions that were requested. And so we needed to lessen the number of marketing internships in order to ensure that there are enough production internships or arts education internships, right? So this is where internship is a little bit different than some of our other grant programs. These balancing factors definitely come into play, especially when we get really high application numbers. And over the past couple years, we've seen that be the case more often than not. So very important disclaimer, we have funding for 228 internships, but we got 303 applications. So what did that mean for 2023? If in 2024 we receive 315 applications, it will be the same thing, right? So just keep that in mind, that the more specific and the more unique and the more thought and effort and time that you put into the application, the more competitive your application will be, even among all of these balancing factors that sometimes have to get implemented. So if you are not a current or grantee of the Arts Internship Program or a current OGP grantee, and were not awarded interns in 2023, then you will need to provide these additional documents. So first, a copy of the organization's 501c3 determination letter. Second, one of the following financial documents: a copy of the organization's SMU Data Arts OGP funder report, which is recommended, a copy of an audited financial statement, or a financial report prepared by an accountant and signed by the board president or chair, or signed federal tax returns. So you are providing one of those 3 or 4 types of documents. Additionally, you must provide one copy of the organization's board members. This will include their names, their professional affiliations, places of residence, and officers identified by title, as well as, and finally, one copy of the history and background of the information that's no more than 2 pages, single space, that includes the mission and purpose of the org, a brief history of the org, a description of the organization's constituency or community, a brief description of the administrative infrastructure, and a list of recent notable programming or projects. So we had a question earlier about, what are those 4 programs, so on and so forth. And so this is just one of those areas where you will be expected to speak to what programming you're doing, right? And again, this is an attempt to show panelists that your organization is active, working in its community, ready to serve its community, and ultimately ready to host an intern. We clarified our language on Model A fiscal sponsors last year. So just to be clear, in order to bring alignment with our OGP and CIG programs, newly applying fiscally sponsored organizations that have a Model A arrangement with a verified state of California-based fiscal sponsor must also provide the following in the application: a copy of the agreement or verification letter from this fiscal sponsor, and a copy of the fiscal sponsor's 990 listing a state of California address. So that's how we verify that there's a Model A arrangement, and also that that your 990 is located in the state of California. And as just a reminder, your fiscal sponsor must be willing to handle all fiscal elements of this process. So they will receive the grant funds, they will process invoices. If your fiscal sponsor is not willing to do those things, even if you are in a Model A arrangement, then we would not be able to contract with your organization. So please check in with them as part of this process. So here is a list of all 7 sections of the Arts Internship application. In the event that you are applying for more than one intern, 5 out of these 7 sections will only need to be completed once and will be able to be reused for additional applications. So we have SurveyMonkey set up so that after the first time you complete most of the application, if you're submitting additional interns, you will be able to reuse that information. However, the 2024 internship position, project and supervisor information task, sorry, that's a mouthful, it's this one right here in the middle, will need to be completed for each internship as it is specific to each requested internship position. So you will remember a minute ago I said one of the quickest ways to not get a second or third intern is by submitting duplicates of the internship, right? I want 2 marketing internships, or I want 2 programming interns, right? There is a reason why we do not allow you to duplicate this task. It's because we want you to fill this out newly for each position that you are requesting. This is where you should spend the most of your time in the application. And as I mentioned, you will need to complete this section for each intern that you are requesting. At the end of the application, you will also be asked to complete a finalization and attestation form. You will also need to complete that individually for each application. It's very basic. It's just saying, hi, I'm the person who's submitting this application. Yes, I have authority to do so. Yes, I've understood the guidelines. It's very brief. It's a new task for us this year, but you will need to complete that individually for each application as well, just to make sure that you're submitting each application and completing it. So to take a deeper dive into that project and supervisor information task, this one that I highlighted right here, where you'll be providing some key information. Firstly, the internship project and internship learning objective sections are heavily scrutinized by panelists. So please make sure you are providing robust answers in these sections, okay? This is literally where in the application panelists are spending the majority of their time. Secondly, you will also be providing internship position marketing information, such as the brief organization and position descriptions, preferred qualifications, and how to apply for the internship. Please pay close attention to this. In the event that your organization is awarded, we will literally copy and paste this information from our application to our website for the job posting. Therefore, it would be in your best interest for your organization to ensure that the language provided here is exciting and relevant to interns looking to apply to your program. There are lots of online resources for writing a compelling job position that I would encourage all organizations to look at. And finally, in the event that the intern will be working at a location that is different from the organization's main address, we will ask you to provide that additional address here. So I'm going to come back to the address in just a second, but I want to back up to this position marketing information. One thing that we're seeing is that folks at this stage, because it's in September and October, it's many months before the intern will be in your organization. You're tired by filling out these applications because it's a lot of information. When organizations get to the how to apply section, or they get to the brief position description, it's just a sentence or two, right? It's just please apply for this marketing internship at this organization. It's going to be a great experience. So then 6 months from now, 7 months from now, when Sam and I are getting ready to build your organization's position on our website, we're taking that one or two really kind of basic lines and posting them on our website. And then the organizations are not getting any applications because it's not exciting, it's not descriptive enough, it's not something that's grabbing the intern's attention. Then we get an email 2 or 3 weeks later from the organization saying, hey, Martine, can we update the website? We're not getting enough internships, and you've lost multiple weeks of time in the recruitment. Do the work now. Pretend that you are going to get awarded this internship and do the work of making sure that your marketing information, if it went up on the website tomorrow, is good to go, exciting, engaging, going to bring interns in to want to apply to your organization. So do not skip out on this section. We want you to spend time making sure that that information is robust, clear, engaging, exciting for an intern. Do not just type it in and then hope that you can fix it later or think that you will fix it later. Do the work of making sure that the information is correct and engaging right now. The other thing that unfortunately has a tendency to happen is there's staff turnover. So the person who's submitting this application for your organization now may not even be with your organization in the spring of next year, and then they're the ones that have it in their mind that they need to update this information later, and it falls through the cracks, right? So spend time in this position marketing information section so that you can make sure that it's good to go, ready to be posted on the website, and you don't have to think about it later. Position launch date, as I mentioned before, just making sure, triple checking that you all recognize that you are picking the launch date as part of your application. So if you have a project that you want to start in June, launch that puppy in April, but pick that now, right? You are picking it now. So make sure that you are clear about what your organization's decision is when you're filling out this application. And some additional key questions that are most scrutinized in the application that we wanted to lift up here on this slide. So describe the intern's primary project during the internship, detailing specific duties and responsibilities. Gotta tell you, lots of sentences that say the intern's primary responsibility will be supporting the executive director during the course of their internship. How? How are they supporting the executive director? What are some of those duties? What's specific to the 2024-2025 season, to the 25-26 season are these interns going to be supporting, right? There's a lot of copying and pasting that has a tendency to happen in this program these days. And so are you copying and pasting what was happening from last year's season and putting it in this application? Unfortunately, that's something that we see a lot and can be a red flag, right? So with specific duties and responsibilities, we want to see this. Describing the additional day-to-day activities of the intern beyond the primary project. This is a great space to talk about how everybody in your organization is expected to work the ticket booth at some point, for example, right? And so the intern is no different and will be able to get some of that experience. Maybe they will be able to interface with students and interns directly, excuse me, not interns, but students directly That's not necessarily part of their job, but they will have that opportunity. You can speak to it there. Again, I've already talked about learning objectives. Make them unique, make them speak directly to the project that the intern is completing, right? And of course, describing the supervisor's qualifications to supervise and mentor the intern. I mentioned that earlier, you will have a space to share that. Maybe your staff has worked closely with students in the past, and this is really easy for them. Maybe they're on faculty somewhere, right? And so, you can speak to that as part of those questions. So these are questions that were added in 2020 that we also want to make sure that we highlight. This first question invites you to think about your recruitment practices. As you already know, this is a crucial element for the program. What can you do to ensure a diverse applicant pool? Note that some organizations who have participated in this program for years and who have fallen into patterns regarding how they rely on their networks have struggled with recruitment post-COVID. There were years where simply posting all of the internships on our website was more than enough for an organization to receive several resumes. Those days, unfortunately, I think because of the pandemic, have passed for some of us. So it's good to start thinking about recruitment early. And note that if you are funded, there will be additional recommendations for how you can bolster your recruitment at supervisor orientation in the spring. For this second question, we also want to know how you think about mentorship within your organization. As I mentioned previously, we recognized the need to make our goals around this intention, around the mentorship aspect of this program more explicit. This provides a space for you to reflect on your organizational attitude and philosophy towards welcoming a new person into your space and for a short period of time. If you had a difficult internship in the previous grant cycle, this is also the space to elaborate on the lessons learned and what your organization is committed to doing differently should they be awarded again. So again, if your organization had an issue with an intern in the previous cycle, speak to it. Don't pretend that it didn't happen, because we all know that it happened as the folks that are in charge of administrating this program. We know when there was an issue between an intern and an organization, and we want you to talk about what your organization learned from that experience. You're not talking about HR details. You're not explaining, who said what and what did what with that intern in the previous cycle, but you're speaking generally about what lessons your organization learned and how you can ensure that that doesn't happen again, right? So it's highlighted, it's underlined here because we really want to make sure that if your organization has struggled with an intern in the past, that you speak to it as part of the application. Do not just glance over it and pretend it did not happen. These are the questions that we will ask you if you indicate interest in hosting a community college student, and they're really just geared at understanding your existing connections with community colleges. Whether or not you choose to host a community college student does not really bear on the success of your application. It's just helpful information for us to know, to make sure that we know kind of who in the field maybe already has connections to community colleges and may be able to support us as part of that effort. We're going to end with a little bit of a brief discussion about creating a new application in SurveyMonkey Apply for those of you that haven't done it before. But I want to make sure that we end with a discussion about deadlines because they slip away from us. Y'all have a lot of competing calendars. I know OGP is open right now. CIAG is open right now. It's grant season. So I know that calendars can get complex. So here are the highlights. The deadline for this application, 11:59 p.m., Wednesday, October 11, 2023. There will be no exceptions, no extensions, no changes to that timeline, no matter what. I have to say, our team loses sleep over these deadlines and making sure that we are clearly communicating them to you all as grantees. So again, the application deadline is October 11th, 2023, 11:59. There will be no extensions. We will let you all know about the status of your award no later than February 16th of 2024. So again, many, many months. I apologize. We're a tiny team. It does take us quite a long time to get through the grants, the panel process and approval process. So we will let folks know by the middle of February about the awards. We will ask for contracts to be due in early March so that the first batch of positions can be posted on April 1st of 2024. And we have a suggested hiring deadline of September 1st, 2024. Won't go into too much detail about that because we'll talk more about it in supervisor orientation in the spring with the awarded grantees. but just to give you a little bit of sense of the timeline there. Okay, we're going to get to questions in just a minute. I see some in the chat, but I want to talk a little bit about our system, SurveyMonkey Apply. For the this is our online grants management system. I believe this is going to be, I think this is the fourth cycle that I've administrated in SurveyMonkey Apply. So we sometimes you might see it in reference as our new grant management system. It's not so new anymore. I have to say, you know, we've gone to a place as a team where we all feel really comfortable with SurveyMonkey Apply. We have all looked into other grant making softwares and feel like SurveyMonkey Apply is still one of the best that are out there. It is not without its quirks. It's not without its weirdness. But our team is getting to a place where we feel very, very comfortable with it and actually can have it do some pretty cool things. So please know that the system is a tool to help you all make sure that you move through this application in a very clear and concise way. If you find that you are fighting yourself or fighting the system with this application, especially for internship, because I'm going to toot my own horn here a little bit and just say that we've done a lot of work in making sure that the internship application functions well in the system. If you find yourself fighting it, reach out to us, reach out to SurveyMonkey Apply so we can get your question answered. If things are going smoothly and according to plan, you should be able to move through the application in a very logical way. And we encourage you to go through it in a logical way. Where possible, avoid bouncing around from section to section, downloading things, working on things later. Try to go through things in the order that it is outlined in the system so that it can support you and support us in making sure that things are submitted completely, wholly, on time. That's really the purpose of the system. So if you use SurveyMonkey before, I apologize. All of this information will probably be not useful to you. But just some tips when you're talking about SurveyMonkey Apply. When you create a user profile, you are creating one for your organization, not an individual. Grant writers that are consultants, that's something for you to keep in mind, right? If you are grant writing for multiple organizations, which accounts are you using? Who has access to accounts, right? Because ultimately, you may be writing the grant, but who is going to be submitting the internship selection form once the intern gets decided? Is that going to be the grant writer, or is that going to be the staff at the organization who are actually supervising the intern? And then who has the login information for that account, right? So ideally, you are creating an account for an organization, not an individual. And so make sure, point number 2, that you save your email and password as a contact that you can share with other folks if folks need it. You are welcome to draft application responses in a Word document. We have a sample application on the website that you can download, so you can actually respond to those questions in a Word document and then go in and drop them later so that you can copy and paste responses to avoid losing work. And probably the biggest piece of advice is do not wait until 11 o'clock on the deadline to submit your application. We always suggest at least a week, at least 5 days submitting your application. Last year was quite something to see on the deadline. I ended my day at 5 o'clock p.m. with about 110 internship applications in the queue, and woke up the next morning to 303 applications. So we had nearly 2/3 of the applications from last year's program get submitted on the day of the deadline. Do not recommend that whatsoever. There can be issues with SurveyMonkey. There can be issues with your own computers. Submit it early. That way, if there are issues, you know, we have plenty of time to assist you. And Sam and I will not be available past 5 o'clock p.m. on the day of the deadline. That has been a really a concrete tradition for us. We're really grateful that the department supports us in making sure that on that day we work our normal business hours and there's no expectation that we hang around later than that. So please submit your application sooner rather than later. So let's say that you have never used SurveyMonkey Apply. We're just going to briefly, very briefly run through how you would create a new account for yourself. So you would go to our website. Here's the link right here. You on that page, you would click the registration button in the upper right-hand corner. Again, you're going to be creating an application, an account for your organization, not an individual. Share that login information with anybody else that that might need it. You're going to go in and create your account with first, last name, email, and password. Again, as I mentioned, you will want to make sure that folks have access to the email and password that might need it in the organization. Once you create that, you're going to get an email verification to your inbox. So you'll want to go to your email inbox and send the verification, or you do the verification link. You can actually go to the main profile of SurveyMonkey and resend the link in the event that you need it. It is very important to note that at this step in the process, you will not be able to see any of the applications in the system, because the system needs you to tell it what type of organization you are. Without getting too far in the details, we are not the only division within the Department of Arts and Culture that uses SurveyMonkey Apply. For example, our civic art team uses SurveyMonkey Apply for individual artists to submit themselves for various projects that are happening around the county. So for those folks, they need to go into SurveyMonkey and tell the system that they have a specific type of account, just like we need you all to do that. So once you do the verification link, you will be asked to fill out your eligibility profile, which you'll see as a green button in this on your main page. So you'll go to eligibility profile, and in your eligibility profile, you're going to add in all kinds of information, including the type of applicant that you are. So again, organization, the type of organization that you are, whether that's a 501c3 nonprofit, which will be for the majority of you, but we also have municipalities or fiscally sponsored organizations that you will be able to indicate here. You'll put your organization's legal name, your address, the website, the phone, FEIN number, DUNS number, LA County vendor number. All of that information needs to go into this eligibility profile, okay? So it is not until you fill out the eligibility profile that you will be able to access any of the grants and be able to apply for them. So once you fill out the eligibility profile and submit it, you will be able to see the LA County Arts Internship Program to be able to create your applications and go from there, right? Very, very important that you fill out this eligibility profile. If at any point you need to update your eligibility profile, and this is for folks that already have SurveyMonkey Apply accounts, all you need to do is click your name in the upper right-hand corner, then click My Account. You'll be taken to these account settings where you can update both your profile information, your notifications, as in what emails you get from the system, from SurveyMonkey Apply, and that eligibility tab. And you can just click this update your eligibility profile information, and you can go in there and update it. This is critical for organizations that have recently moved addresses, meaning that you changed where you do business. If you've had to update your LA County vendor information with us in the past couple of years, please make sure that you've gone in and updated your eligibility profile with the most up-to-date address, because it is very important that this be up to date, because if you don't change it here, then it's going to pull information into your application that is wrong and outdated, and we need you to make sure that that information is up to date. One final note, I'm just going to say it again. I think I said it earlier. If you are requesting more than one internship, you are submitting an individual application for each one of those internships. So if you want 3 interns, we need to have 3 applications from you. Do not, in one application, submit information for multiple internships. We will consider that a disqualified application and not be able to proceed with it. So you can keep track of how many applications you've opened. When you go in to the system, it will show you have 1 application, you have 2 applications, you have 3 applications. The system will automatically cut you off at 3. You are not going to be able to make 4 or 5. Let's say that you open up 2 applications, but you only end up wanting to submit 1. That's totally fine. Just make sure that your 1 application has been submitted. You can leave the other one hanging out, and we will deal with it later. So for any folks that had a ton of questions in the chat, highly recommend that you schedule some time to meet with me in my office hours. I'm going to copy and paste this link right here. This is really the best way to get individualized questions asked. I know that sometimes organizations can feel like, you know, they kind of have like a weird, quirky circumstance, or there's just something that I was not able to speak, you know, to as part of this presentation that you would like to ask me. Please set up some time for office hours. This is something that all of the program managers do. We've been doing for the past couple of years. It's because we want to make ourselves accessible. We know that we're hard people to get a hold of. As Sam and I are standing on this precipice of bringing in, probably another 150 plus organizations into this upcoming grant cycle that we're talking about today. She and I have 157 organizations for the current art internship cycle and 228 internships for the current internship cycle that we are navigating and supporting and handholding at the same time. So it is very difficult for me to go back and forth in emails with folks about specific application questions or specific questions around the guidelines. Our inboxes are heavily impacted. Schedule office hours. It's very disheartening for us at the end of an application cycle to have very few grantees either attend these workshops or attend our office hours and then get emails later on in the year about how we did not answer questions or how folks did not feel like they can they can access us because we actually make ourselves extremely accessible as part of the application process. But the longer the application is open, the closer we get to the deadline, the harder it is to make all of these things happen and to get access to us. So I'm very encouraged by the number of folks we have in today's workshop. This is actually the most I think we've had in quite a few years. So please take advantage of our office hours where I can actually sit down and discuss one-on-one with you some of those questions. Calendly is the system that we've been using for the past couple of years. It makes it very easy. You go in, you see my calendar, you pick the time that works for you. It will automatically generate an email to you and I with the Zoom information so that we can jump on Zoom and discuss. So please take advantage of that. If you need to send us an email, you can reach myself and Sam at the inbox you see on your screen, internship@arts.lacounty.gov. That is the general internship inbox. If you need to send us an email, we will be happy to take a look at it there and respond to you as necessary. So again, jump into the Calendly link if you need it. You see it here on your screen so that if you would like to schedule office hours with me, you can. It's a great way to get one-on-one support and for us to talk through the particulars of the grant. Holy moly, it's a lot of information. And thank you so much for bearing with us. That does conclude the formal presentation piece of today. So let's move into questions. I'm going to ask Sam to come up and join me. And Sam, if you could lift up some questions for us.
Sure thing. Okay, first question. Can we please get a copy of this PowerPoint?
Yes, we will make sure we send this presentation to you as a PDF as part of your wrap-up email that you will receive.
Okay, next up. Will existing applicants have priority then to be approved for a grant? Trying to assess what sort of shot a new applicant has in this context.
So it is a highly competitive program, and organizations that have, successfully participated in the program before, obviously, they don't need to submit supplemental materials. They've tried to be, we've tried to kind of shortcut how much materials they need to submit to our department because you've already participated in the program before. But each year, we try to look at the program as a whole and make decisions based off of the overall health and diversity of the applicant pool. That does include a little bit of a discussion of like who has, had interns for many years and has demonstrated to us that they know what they're doing and can put forward a very strong internship experience. But every single year, we have new grantee organizations that are proposing brand spanking new internships that blow us away, right? And I actually think that fresh eyes and coming into the application with a lot of details and with really clear demonstration of how your organization is approaching not only the project itself, but the onboarding, the mentorship, the long-term success of a young person can always make a really strong case in the pool. And I should also just say that we have organizations that cycle in and out. So we have some organizations that participate for year after year and then they take a year off. Or there's a lot of staff turnover. And so this is not a year that they're going to be able to host an intern, and they know that. So they will step away for the program cycle for a year or two before returning. So it's really anybody's game. What matters the most is a strong application that clearly speaks to the experience for an intern, and that they will learn valuable skills, transferable skills. They will have a unique experience, as well as speaking to the capacity and interest of the organization to mentor a young person as part of this process. If you are speaking to both of those things in a really dynamic, concise way that includes a lot of details, you have a shot at this program, and all of it is going to come down to how many applications we receive. New applicants applying in a cycle, you know, really, I think, should take advantage of those fresh eyes and putting forward the best application that you can that speaks to the integrity and the capacity of your organization. That's really what we want to see.
Okay. Continuing on the topic of applications, so can you expand or repeat what type of internships are over impacted versus which there is more of a need for?
I would suggest looking at final reports that are available on our website, because we talk a little bit about what some of the most common positions are. I'm just making sure I find the right slide here. So what I can share is that every year for the past couple of years, marketing positions have been the highest requested type of position in the pool. We're not saying that we don't want to see marketing positions, but marketing positions were a highly competitive sector last year. That could change next year. We could see in this cycle, it could be that arts education internships or research positions, probably not research positions, unfortunately, but maybe arts education or production, grant writing, that category could be the highest next year. So it's impossible for us to know. All I will say is that in the 2023 cycle, we had an overwhelming request for marketing positions. And so it became a little bit more difficult for folks to get a marketing position because your marketing position had to really stand out alongside many, many other applicants that submitted marketing positions. Again, that does not mean that marketing positions will be be the most requested position next year, but that's what it was for 2023. I think, spend less time worrying about what is going to get the most requests and spend more time thinking about how you can make that position stand out regardless of what section or position type it falls under. Because again, if your organization has done the work of thinking about what it will mean to receive a young person in this internship and to support them and to build out a structure, we have some folks that will submit a week by week breakdown of what the intern will be doing for the 10 weeks of their internship, the 12 weeks, the 15 weeks, the 20 weeks. That might seem like a lot of work to do at the application period, but it is the level of dedication that we're going to ask of you if this intern is awarded. So why not? They're going to need a week by week work plan to conduct their internship. So why not submit that now as part of the application, right? So again, spend less time thinking about how can I submit an application in a category where we're not going to get a lot of positions and therefore make my application more likely to get funded, and spend more time thinking about how can I make this position proposal unique enough that no matter what category it's in, it will get funded. I think that's how I would suggest looking at it.
Okay, next question. For the page where we enter the project and supervisor info, is there a different page for each internship we would like funding for? Or do we put all the info on one page?
Great question. You are filling out an individual application for every position that you are requesting. So this form, in 2020, you are submitting all 7 of these stages for every internship that you are requesting, 1, 2, or 3. You are submitting all of these forms once, twice, or 3 times. This internship position project and supervisor information task is where you're going to be explaining the individual details of that internship. So if it's production internship, you'll fill that out for a production internship. In your second application, if it's for marketing, then you will fill that out for marketing. So it's one application for each intern that you are requesting.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, last question we have here. Can the same person supervise more than one intern?
That's a great question. Yes, the answer is yes. You will definitely want to speak to, again, in the application we ask you what are the supervisor's qualifications, right? So if they are supervising 2 interns, you may want to speak about how they have experience supervising multiple interns in previous arenas, right? So yeah, you definitely want to speak to that. I do think that it's probably better to if where possible, have a different intern supervisor for each intern. One thing we will also see is like 2 interns supervisors that kind of share custody. So let's say that your organization has 2 interns and there are 2 supervisors. One supervisor might be the primary supervisor for one intern, and then the secondary supervisor on the second intern, and then for the second intern they swap, right? So then the primary supervisor for intern 2 is the secondary supervisor for intern 1. So you can kind of demonstrate how like this is going to be the point person, but they're going to have support, right? There's going to be somebody else that's kind of like can support them in the day to day. So you may want to speak to that as part of the application. Again, if you are having them supervise more than one, maybe talk about how they're qualified to do that and what experience they may have had in the past doing just that. Yeah, great question. Okay, final call for questions. Final call for questions before we end. And I'm going to give it a minute just to make sure there's not somebody furiously typing. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions come into the chat. On the behalf of Sam and I and the Department of Arts and Culture, I just want to thank you all again for making the time to be here today, for asking really, really great and important questions. The application will close on Wednesday, October 11th at 11:59 p.m. sharp, not a minute before, not a minute after. So please, please, please make sure that you get your application in well in advance of that deadline. If you are going through the application and you have specific questions, please utilize my office hours here on the slide. I also dropped them in the chat to be able to schedule some time with me to discuss. Sometimes that's much easier than just going back and forth in emails. We are here to support you. I mentioned already our department, our team, myself, Roz, Mara for AIP, OGP, and CIAG, we really, really bend over backwards to make ourselves available. But we cannot be available in the final 2 days of the application cycle or the final day of the application cycle. It's simply too much. So please get this done early. Please give yourself plenty of time in order to fill out the application. If you have any questions, please be sure to reach out. Otherwise, thank you all so much for being here today. We hope to see your applications come in the next couple of weeks. And I will be hosting another session at the beginning of October, should you like to attend again or pass this on to a friend. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing your applications in the coming weeks. Thank you, everybody. Take care.